but it's about what you are going to do. And it's about that if you believe at the end, right? Because even though John the Baptist came and you saw, the Pharisees never believed. And that's why Jesus says, the tax collectors and the sinners, they'll be in heaven before you. Why? Because they saw and they believed. You know, there's a cause for pause here, right? Because this is an opportunity to kind of look at ourselves. Because we assume things all the time, don't we? It's kind of natural. We look at someone and we assume something. And it's not always good things. We assume the worst in people too, don't we? You know? So, and you know, I have to confess, I do it all the time. Because I'm driving up, you know, I'm always taking the Montlake exit off of 520. And you know, on that little strip, there's like this little walkway, or kind of like this little barrier from this coming traffic to that, you know, to where we're going. And there's always some panhandlers there, right? And you know, it seems like they rotate in and out, right? Every other day you see the same person, or it's the next person, and they rotate in and out. And one day I saw a guy, and he wasn't so dirty, but he had this sign. He said, "I need money, please help." Right? Anything helps. And I was looking at him, and I was like, wow, he has some nice shoes. I was like, wow, he has better jeans than I do, you know? And I'm like thinking, so I'm assuming things about this guy, and I'm just, you know, I'm assuming the worst. I was like, you know, I'm thinking, come on, right? But the thing is, that's one of the things that we cannot do. Because that's what this passage is really saying. Because when we start to assume that we're good, or that we're in, that's when things go wrong. And so the second thing is this. It's false presumptions. Okay? Now the religious folk of Jesus' day made false assumptions about a lot of others, right? Because they were like, oh, you know, how can you hang out with these tax collectors and sinners? You know, what gives you the authority after you do all these things? You know, so they're assuming a lot of things. But then what they also did was they had false presumptions about themselves. Okay, and because they had this mentality that we're the good guys, right? We're the good guys. We definitely are tight with God. Okay, and the problem is with this is that they don't so much see themselves in relationship with God because of who they are, but because of who others are not. Does that make sense? So, and let me read that one more time. They don't so much see themselves in relationship with God because of who they are, but because of who others are not. Now, let me go on and give you guys an example of it. So they thought that they were faithful because they saw others as unfaithful. Right? And they thought they were righteous because they see others as sinners. Okay? And Luke gives us a really great example of this type of thinking. Okay? Of these false presumptions. And in Luke chapter 18, verse 11, it comes to a story about two people going to the temple to pray. One was a tax collector and one was a Pharisee. Okay? One was a chief priest. So then what happened was, they go into there, and the tax collector starts praying, and then the Pharisee stands in the back, and he says this. He says, the Pharisee stood and was praying thus to himself, God, I thank thee that I am not like other people, swindlers, the unjust, adulterers, or even like the tax collector right there praying. You know, the real danger with false presumptions is that we presume upon the grace of God. Okay? So then when we start presuming I'm in with God, then God makes grace no grace at all. Does that make sense? So then it is no longer a gift of God, but it's like a reward of good work. Because when Jesus died and put grace and gave grace, it was a gift. But then when we say that we're in, and when we say that we're in and we're tight, then it's all about a reward. This is our reward. So then a good way to kind of give you a reality check on this presumption, right, is to finish this sentence. I am okay with God because. Right? How would you finish that sentence? I am okay with God because. Right? Because if you guys answer, because I'm not such a bad person, then that's a pharisaic way. Right? Because if you guys can answer that question by saying, well, I'm okay with God because I'm a good person. Right? Then that depends on your behavior. And then grace is all of a sudden a reward, not a gift. I don't know how you would answer that question. But that's something you guys got to think about. How will you guys answer that question? The third thing, and the final thing, is broken promises. I think this is the part that I want you guys to really, really hit on. Broken promises. Now, Jesus tells us this story, right? And it turns all the assumptions and presumptions inside out. And it's not the one who says, but the one who does. Okay? With the two sons, when he gives the parable of the two sons, it's not about the one who says that they're going to go, but it's about the one who does. And so then it is our walk and not our talk that counts with God. Right? You know, when I was younger, and I was about 3rd grade, and I used to live in Renton. And it was this real small town. You know, there was still farms around there, you know, and but we lived in one of these like new developments out there, and there was this like neighborhood park, and they had a basketball court there. So then during the summers, my parents were always working. They owned like a little grocery store. So then, you know, they were working day and nights. So then, you know, during the summers, I was there with my sisters, but my sisters were doing their own thing, and I was, you know, doing my own thing, right? So then, and that was when I was really getting into basketball. And that was like, I was like, ooh, Sonics, yeah, you know, Sonics, yeah, right? So then, every day during the summer, I'd be like, you know, going and shooting hoops, and you know, shooting the basketball. And no one was there. It was like a really new development. So then, you know, there wasn't a lot of kids there, so I was one of the few. And so, what happened one day, you know, was a guy came and said, hey, can I shoot some hoops with you, and you know, whatever, right? And this was back then, before stranger danger, you know, kind of thing. Okay, so we were like, okay, so we're shooting, and I'm like, you know, we're talking, and you know, I'm very passionate about this basketball thing right now, and we're talking about all this stuff, and like, he's like, oh yeah, who's your favorite player? I was like, yeah, there's this new rookie on the Sonics, Xavier McDaniels. You guys remember him? Yeah. His name was like X-Man, right? Okay, so then, and like that year, he came up second in Rookie of the Year polling and stuff like that. So I remember all this, right? And I was just thinking like, okay, so my parents, you know, they didn't want to waste anybody, so then they were like, why do you want basketball cards? You know, this is a waste of money, right? So then I was telling him, yeah, I wish I had one of those, and the guy was like, oh yeah, I got like tons of those, right? And so then, you know, I'm like, he's like, yeah, you want one? You know? So I know this kind of sounds a little weird right now, but it wasn't like that, okay? It wasn't like that. So then I'm like shooting and I'm like doing whatever, and he's like, yeah, I'll give you one, right? I'll just drop it off, right? I'll just drop it off. So he's like, because you know, right at that time, you know, the neighborhood was small. It's like, yeah, I'm right up by the front, you know, in this cul-de-sac. He's like, I know exactly where that is. You know, I'll just drop it off in your mailbox. I was like, cool, right? I was like, yeah, you know, so I was like, okay, I gotta go, you know, whatever. And I'm like going there, and I'm, you know, tell my mom and dad, I'm like, yeah, you know, some guys didn't give me, and they're like, you know, what, right? So I'm like this, and so here I am. I'm like getting ready for bed. I can't go to sleep. I'm so excited, right? This is like, you know, Christmas, you know, times 10, like, you know, excitement, right? Okay, so Can't go to sleep. I'm like, I amped up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get this, and all of a sudden, so then I wake up in the morning, I run outside, check the mailbox, first thing I do, boom, and it's not there. And this guy promised me that he would put it in my mailbox, right? And I was hurt. I mean, this was, come on. That was, when you're a third grader, it's like, if someone promises you something and it's not there, man, broken promises hurt. Right? Broken promises hurt. The thing is, today, I think broken promises happen more regularly and without people even noticing that it happens. Right? Because, here we go. Commercials, all these products that have been tested and all this stuff, they launch the commercial and be like, buy this product, it'll change your life. Well, does it? Really? Broken promise, right? Politicians, I promise this, I promise that, right? Do they do it? No. Broken promise. It just happens. And we don't even think about it, right? Here's my daughter. She's 4, okay? And it happens with her too. I'm like, Manny, can you go clean your play area? It's getting a little dirty. It's getting a little messy. Oh, okay, I will. Doesn't happen, man. Broken promise. I'm telling you. Okay, those don't hurt as much, but they still hurt, right? These broken promises. So here's these broken promises. Happens all the time. We probably do it, every time we come to church. We see someone that we haven't seen for a week or a couple months or something like that, and we see them, hey, let's get together. Do you guys get together? No. Broken promise. Oh, I'll call you. Do you call? No. Right? All these things. So what happens? Oh, let's hang out. Let's do this. Is it easier to just say no? Or is it easier to say yes and not go through with it? Broken promises. Right? We get so used to it. We get so into the moment that we promise all these things and we never come through. And the thing is, broken promises hurt us. Broken promises hurt God too. Right? Here we go. I've done it. God, you know what? I'm going to read the Bible more this year. I promise. God, I'm going to pray more this year. I promise. God, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to turn the leaf, go the other way. I'm not going to do this anymore. Broken promises. There's all these false assumptions, false presumptions, and then there's all these broken promises. We do it all the time. But the thing is, just because we do it all the time doesn't make it okay. And that's what I want to get at. When you guys make a promise, if you guys can't keep that promise, say no. That's the habit that we need to get into. That's the habits that'll change our lives. Because no matter what side you're on, if you're the one who's breaking the promise, or if you're the one giving the promise and not going through with it, you'll get hurt either way. Because either you'll get hurt because someone broke that promise, or as God and as Jesus taught us through this passage today, if you give the promise and you assume and you do all these things and you don't believe, then others will go in front of you.